Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Serious. Night Watchmen of Reddit. What's the creepiest situation you've ever been in on shift? Part 2. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Being outside on a dark, windy night. I work at a power plant. It's not so bad when the plant is running and you can hear the hum of equipment all around you. But when everything is shut down, you can hear the creaking of all the metal structures and listen to the groan of the 200-foot-tall stacks as it sways in the wind. Then there's the whistling and moaning sound the wind makes as it blows through. Couple that with coyotes howling in the woods nearby, and you've got yourself a nice basket of nope. Being out in that is what I get paid for though, so off I go. I was in Afghanistan doing a 3-day mission in a valley to Gab we have never been in. We had no intel and nobody to let us in on the situation. Think of this as going in dry. We were just there to determine whether or not there was a threat for future supply routes. We set up camp at an old hotel-like structure. It was a rec center but built like a cheap motel that had been bombed to shit. It still had all the rooms, but the face of the building was gone. There were still pieces of wall left which we basically hid behind to pull surveillance. So a few days go by and we see nothing. Our intel has nothing new to report. Our interpreters are quiet. It's time to bug out and give the green light to the forces that need this route. This is about 2 a.m. I'm pulling guard while everyone else is getting ready to leave. I have thermoscope and NVOs. Out of nowhere, I see about 100 people gathering into a mass across the valley and call it in. We stay put. We all pull out our NVOs and try to figure out if this is just some religious crap or another ambush. It was absolutely an ambush. We had been in the area for too long, and local fighters had just enough time to gather everyone up to try and overtake us. We were a small, special group. We realized we were outnumbered and immediately called in air support. The French owned the battle space at this time, and they had Tiger helis there within minutes. Next thing I remember was watching hundreds of men with guns through night vision, hearing the sounds of approaching attack helicopters, and running at us full force. We were so outnumbered that fighting to the death was the only way out. The helis came out of the darkness and literally obliterated everything. Holy effing shit. The sound, the smell, the sight, un-effing real. Body parts flying everywhere. When looking at this shit through thermal optics and NVGs, it looks like rain. So much blood. Imagine your impending doom being suddenly wiped out by attack helicopters in a valley on the other side of the planet. Unreal. Scariest night of my life. FOB Morales Fraser, Capiza Province, Afghanistan, OEF 10. A buddy of mine was a security guard at McGill University in Quebec, California. He worked at the graveyard shift and was doing his multiple building rounds when he went to check the morgue for medical training. On the slab was a little girl laid out with a sheet up to her shoulders. When he turned around, she was standing right behind him looking down at her dead corpse. It was actually her identical twin, and her parents followed her in a moment later, but it gave him such the heebie-jeebies. Whoa. I've had many weird moments, but this is one of the top. I was guarding a construction site at night, just relaxing all alone in the tiny shack which the carpenters built for the guards. Suddenly I heard a rustling sound, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. As I kept listening, I realized it was coming from the floor right below me. I jumped out of the shack with the reflexes of a panther, spun around and fixed my light on the space under the shack floor. There I saw a pair of little red eyes peeking out at me, and then it emerged. The absolutely hugest possum man has ever encountered. It crawled out and made its way under the tool shed nearby, and I never saw it again. Keep in mind that this is in a large city area where any kind of wildlife is extremely rare to see. I used to be a doorman concierge at a condo in Midtown Manhattan. One night around 2 a.m. I got a call on a desk phone. A man was telling me that someone in my building was posing nude in front of his window with the light on, and that he was doing all kinds of sexual things to himself. He expressed concern for his daughter. Her bedroom could see everything. I asked him what floor it was on and such, and I also told him that there isn't much I could do about it since people can do what they want in their property, and that I recommend he closed his blinds and such. I then realized that the apartment he described was supposed to be vacant. I then started getting pretty damn nervous. I was 19 at the time, and I thought of all the horrible possible scenarios that could happen. I thought some stranger snuck into the building and started squatting in an empty condo. I grabbed my pocket knife, and instead of taking the elevator, I took the emergency staircase 3 stories up to the floor of the apartment to avoid alerting anyone of my presence. I finally get up to the 3rd floor, and I notice the elevator still at the lobby floor where I'd left it. I then slowly start to approach the supposed vacant apartment door. I slowly turn the knob to see if it were open. It was locked, and I slowly inserted the key, trying to make as little noise as possible. I open the door and see all the lights are off, except for a light coming from the room the man describing seeing a naked man in. My heart started pounding. I had to convince myself that I'd lived in a physical universe, and that it would not be possible for the naked man to know of my presence. I was incredibly quiet. I took off my shoes before entering the hardwood floor apartment. In my socks, holding nothing but shoes and a small pocket knife, I start to approach the bedroom where the door was closed, but the light was clearly on. As I slowly walk toward the door, I notice that the floor was wet, as if they had exited the shower. Someone was definitely here. I set down my shoes and draw my knife. My heart is pounding so hard I feel it in my throat. I did my best to remain calm and convinced myself there was no way for that person to know of my presence. Slowly approaching the door, I stay as quiet as I possibly can to see if I can hear anything coming from the other side of the door. I stood there for about 5 minutes in the dark and I hear nothing. I gently placed my hand on the bedroom door, debating whether to try and open the door slowly or to go in fast before the perv knows someone is about to enter. I made my decision. I burst into the room. I see nothing. I quickly look around the room, quickly look in the closet, and then under the bed. Nothing. The room was furnished because it was used as a showroom for open houses to potential customers. I find nothing, except a pile of what appeared to be semen on the window and floor. I was so confused. I also started to freak out, because someone was here, and now they're not. Where could they be? I put my shoes back on, then turned on all the lights in the apartment and do a full sweep. I find nothing. I begin to exit the apartment and call the elevator to head back to the lobby. The elevator doors open, and to my shock, I see moist footprints on the marble floor of the elevator. I didn't know what to think. I knew I had to get back to my desk. I rush back to the lobby, head straight for my security camera system, and backtrack all cameras in the lobby outside for the last 45 minutes. Then I saw it. Not 2 minutes after I entered the emergency staircase, the elevator doors open, and a man in a giant trench coat and fedora exits the elevator and walks outside from the lobby entrance, seemingly barefoot. To this day, I have no idea who that was, and I sure as hell had a hard time explaining to the board of directors. Good thing I had the security footage of the mysterious pervert, else I'd have no way of explaining the large sums of jizz all over the bedroom windows of the showroom condo. The next day, I went and purchased a larger pocket knife. Well, I think you did as good a job as you could have investigating that sticky situation. This isn't as creepy as some of the other stories on here, but I work as a student employee, OA, operations assistant, aka taking out trash, setting up for events, etc. My college's student union. As part of the job, whoever works the last shift, which is normally like 8 p.m. to 12 a.m., has to shut off the lights and lock the building before they leave. I worked this shift once, and before I left, my final job was to mop the cafe we have in the union. This normally takes a while, so I'm there till about 12:30 some nights, and everybody else is long gone. As I was locking up and just double checking all the floors, making sure the lights were off, so forth, I could have sworn I kept hearing shuffling or movement. I just assumed it was either the pipes in the building because it was winter and the heat pipes are always making weird sounds, or some other students, since student organization members have access to the building and sometimes stay past close. The next morning, my manager went into the bathroom and found a homeless guy sleeping in there, who then booked it out before campus police got him. Apparently, after checking cameras, the guy snuck in before I locked up and followed me around, making sure to stay out of sight until I left. Never seemed like he was planning on hurting me, but still freaked me out that I was being watched the whole time. I was the night watchman at a beach for a summer. I was sitting around bored, playing on Tinder, when someone started messaging me. I messaged back. Things were going well, until I noticed something strange. Her distance from my location read less than 1 mile. I looked up the east end of the beach, all sand. Down the west end, all sand. Behind me, all brush, for miles. Out into the ocean, nothing. To this day, I can't explain my haunted Tinder match. TLDR, a spooky Tinder match haunted me during my night watch. I used to work at Universal Studios doing security on the night shift. An old couple ran the night shift. Let's call them Adolf and Ava. Whoa. Ava was dispatch. There were 6 mobile units. We'd check in every hour over walkie-talkies. Unit 1, check, etc. Adolf would always check in with Unit 1, check, and then chirp like a bird. Ava would respond, Central, copy. And for Adolf, she'd make a meowing sound. One night, after the umpteenth hourly meow, Unit 2 decided to check in with a dog bark, which in turn got everyone going. Unit 3, check. Unit 4, check. Unit 5, check. Monkey, ooh, ooh, ah, 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 etc. Then, after all 6 units checked in, we hear a sepulchral and non-existent Unit 7, check, followed by a good 15 seconds of explosive flatulence. I apologize, or you're welcome, for the animal sounds I just made, but the choice of names for your characters in your story, very naughty. I used to work as security for a cemetery overnight. They had a problem with people vandalizing memorials and prostitution, because who doesn't want to have sex in the cemetery then knock over a gravestone? Our patrol vehicle was a Prius. My favorite thing to do was roll around in battery mode with all the lights turned off and sneak up on people. I would get as close as possible to them before turning all my lights on and honking the horn. It was a lot of fun. Never seen any supernatural stuff though. Security guy here, and I mostly attribute this to lack of sleep, but it's fun anyway. So, I usually work evenings, 1500 to 2300, and due to a call-off, I got off at 2300 on Friday, and was back in at 0500 Saturday. So I come in, caffeinated all to hell, much to the irritation of my partner, a retired cop. He tells me, why don't you go patrol the entire complex or something? So away I go. About a half hour later, I'm going through the legal department. I hear an object fall behind me and whip around. Nothing there. I turn back around and swear I saw the end of a leg finish a step into a side office with an open door. I radio down to ask if anybody else is moving around the building, and my partner replies no. So I slowly creep up to the office. Flashlight out, other hand on my pistol, and the office is not only unoccupied but totally empty. No phone, no computers, no papers, nothing. I later found out that a guy had died on that floor, massive heart attack on the toilet, and the building's original maintenance supervisor also died on property. I'm not the first one to see an apparition during off-hour patrols. When I had just graduated high school, I started working at a truck stop a few miles outside of town. I usually worked evenings, but I had to switch shifts with the night shift guy, so there I was at 3 a.m. fighting sleep. A car pulls into the parking lot and parks. There's a guy in the driver's seat crying, and a woman in the passenger seat just staring straight ahead, not moving, no emotion whatsoever. They sat there for what seemed like an hour. Then the guy gets out and comes in. He grabs a few random items and puts them on the counter. The whole time he's looking all around, checking for other people. There was no one but us for miles. He then stares right into my very soul and says, "It's quiet out here, isn't it? So quiet you can almost hear the angels singing." I muttered something unmemorable and he left. She never moved. I do a lot of long overnight shifts at my job as a data center operator. We're situated inside the HQ of the company we work for, so a lot of the time I'm in a big corporate office with half the lights out and no one around for 12 hours. We have a large monitor of security cameras set up in our work area, so sometimes I'll catch sight of something walking through the parking lot at like 0300. The most creeped out I've ever been was probably when I found some office doors open that are supposed to be closed, a break room light on down the hall, they're automated and on timers, and a broken desk phone on the floor of the exercise room, all on my way to go work out. It was spooky. Worst experience was probably last week. They did some maintenance on our fire and security systems, so when I came in at 0200 to cover part of someone's shift, I set an alarm off. The adrenaline had me on edge the rest of the day. Not Watchmen, actually, but here it goes. In the 80s, I worked at a rental car company at a large regional airport. Every shift, the cars actually at airport had to be counted. In those days, where the cars were turned in at the airport was next to a 6-story parking garage from where you could see the type and number of cars easily. I was counting the cars when a guy walks up and says, "Want to see something?" With that, he climbed up on the wall and sat on top of it with his legs dangling. I said something like, "You should not be fooling around like that." The guy swung around and hung on with his hands for a moment, then let go. From what I heard later, his body hitting the roof of the rental car counter below knocked light fixtures off the ceiling. The last part of this story is in very few seconds later, a woman came up asking if I had seen her boyfriend. I told her that someone had just jumped off the building. She started crying, and then the cops showed up. Whoa. To witness something like that can be very traumatizing, so I hope that you're okay. That's pretty wild of a story. And then the girlfriend, it's a lot. I work for an ambulance company, and my shift is 1900 to 0700. So between calls, we post at certain areas throughout our coverage. So we get posted to a usual area, and we know of some quiet areas. This parking spot we have is at the end of a street where a housing complex was being built, but it's no longer active. Keep in mind, this street is extremely difficult to stumble upon. You kinda have to know where it is to find it. So we back in, like usual, just in case we have a call, and about 45 minutes pass, and we notice a 4-door sedan come driving up the street. Immediately lock the doors, cause it's only us out here, and the car does a U-turn in front of us. Cool, they're leaving. Nope. They put it in reverse and back up to our right-hand side. At this point, I have the radio in my hand waiting for shit to go down. Not to bring race into the picture, but now 4 Mexican guys aged mid-20s get out and start taking pictures of our ambo from all angles, and I even hit them with the floodlights to deter them, and they were unfazed by it. After about, say, 10 pictures overall, they all just got back in their car and drove off. To this day, I have no idea what that was about.